The following contains views and opinions that do not necessarily represent the perspective of the University of Tennessee. The Grace House, located in the center of downtown Athens, Tennessee, is home to a rotating crew of 12 to 15 men, all of whom are in active recovery from drugs or alcohol or both. It's a surprising success story in a state that continues to suffer from worsening overdose rates.
He works in my business. I try to get him sober. He fails. He's out there on the street. He calls me yesterday. He can go to any rehab he wants. And he's like, hey, man, you think you can get me to Grace House? I said, how fast can you get there?
Alan Carter, one of the leading board members of the Grace House, gave the Smart Policy Network a tour last August.
So what we'll do is we'll walk through.
Both of these?
Yes. Yep. So you start here, and then you gradually, as you get better and you move up into leadership, you move into this house.
It's a humble place. Consisting of 2 donated houses and partially run by St. Paul's Episcopal Church, the Grace House looks a lot like an old dorm.
In this room, you've got 4 beds, and then you've got another room with 4 beds, and it's almost like a likening to a sober fraternity house. Oh. Like these guys are really taking care of themselves, are working a program.
What started as a homeless shelter quickly became something much more.
The Grace House was started because we saw a need that wasn't being met.
Henry Harrison is the priest at St. Paul's.
We knew we had a problem of homelessness, and we started looking around at what assets were already in place. We knew a friend who had a property in downtown Athens, and it wasn't being used. And we asked if we could put this one particular man who was being arrested for trespassing in this property. Alan refers to it as the lawnmower shed, and he's exactly right. That's all it was a lawnmower shed. So our friend said, sure, let's have a go at it. And so we did. And it worked. And what I mean by it worked is we kept our homeless friend out of jail long enough to get his meds straightened out. He had a mental health problem, then get him a place to rent and, sort of stair step from there. After that first success, we kind of got sort of gracefully and graciously confident that we might be able to repeat this. And so we looked for the next person who was experiencing homelessness, and the next one after that, and the next one after that. We realized that another common denominator in the homeless population in our community was addiction. People were homeless for reasons related to drug and alcohol addiction. And me and my friends understood that addiction is a disease. And so what they needed was treatment. But it's just darn hard to get into recovery if you're trying to figure out how you're going to eat and where you're going to sleep every day. So we asked our friend if we could use not only his lawnmower shed, but the house that the lawnmower shed was attached to, which was also empty. And he said, sure, of course.
Partially because of the church affiliation, but mainly because of its overwhelming success, the Grace House enjoys significant community support.
We have local people that cook meals. And they'll come in here, and these people from churches, families, they'll bring their kids, and they'll all sit in here and they'll eat together. And these church people are like, this is the greatest thing for my kids, to be able to help other people, to see how other people are, and it's just really good lessons for them. I don't know that, look at all this food. There's more food here than there is in my house.
What we found over and over again is everybody wants to help. Oh, you want me to help feed homeless people, and you'll have the time and the place and the table set? I'm in. It's like the most well-fed group of people in McMinn County.
I tell them all the time, I'm like, no, listen, when you check in the Grace House, don't gain 25 pounds now. And like you don't have to get, like some of them need it, but the others, I'm like, hey, that's enough. It's turned in to the coolest rehab that I've ever seen. And we do it on a shoestring.
Oh, we've spent a little bit to, clean the house up and maybe patch the roof or something, but we have not spent any significant money to this point. Shortly after we get started, we do need to start spending money to pay the light bill and the water bill and these sorts of things. But what we found is, a $300 bill here, a $200 bill there, a $100 bill there, just utilities, this sort of thing. That's easy to raise. We didn't have in the early days a lot of big donors. We had a lot of, $100, $200, $500, every now and then $1,000 donors. Said, yeah, I want to be a part of this. We always kept it low cost.
Now listen, if we wanted to, we could make this as nice as we want to make it, okay? But this is the way that we feel like it worked. So We don't want anything perfect for them and all this stuff. We don't want a rub your feet rehab type place. This is it.
The Grace House operates on less than $30,000 per year. The main reason for this is due to the significant amount of community investment they have received.
Well, the Grace House is accepted by the community because of, how much we give back.
This is George, one of the former residents of the Grace House.
We do a lot of help with the homeless, the food banks. We do a lot of charity work for the churches. Last year we did the barbecue for the Juneteenth festival.
In my business, I'll have our clients call and say, hey, I've got this roofer and he's got issues and he needs help or whatever. And I said, well, send them on. So if we have a roofing problem, we don't get a bill. If we need a washer or a dryer, we have a local electronics place and I'll call him and say, I need a scratch and dent, send me a bill. We don't get a bill. It's total community involvement.
The support has paid off. Many of the residents of the Grace House go on to get jobs in the community.
The people in Athens are so welcoming. They'll hire us. People that own companies around in Athens, they hire us to work for them. They give us a second chance at life and to get ourselves back on our feet.
I can't tell you how many of the guys that have gone through have worked at Hiawassee Builder Supply.
These men that come through there are talented and they can do most of the work.
Yeah.
So it's good for them and it's good for us too.
And they've been very good to, like Matt works for them, to give the men an opportunity to work there.
Matt is the senior steward at the Grace House, which means that he, along with the junior steward, having gone through the program themselves, oversee the operations on the ground. They live on site.
So if we have an opening, we'll bring them in, we'll sit down, we'll talk to them, we'll see if they're a good fit for the house, we'll see if they actually want this, we'll sit down and tell them the rules. I mean, obviously, they're in a blackout period for 28 days. They're here at the house. They don't have a job. They don't have a cell phone. We have a house phone if they need to call family to let them know where they're at. But we use that time to help them get started in the program because a lot of the times we get in here and we think we just need a job, we need to get some money and we'll be okay. But really deep down, we're sick and we need help. So that first 28 days is to help them get a sponsor, start going to meetings, start working this program, and then we gradually allow them to do more on top of that.
And it's like a community, it's like a brotherhood inside that house. Everybody sticks together because we all know what each other is going through.
What we realized is we didn't really need outside experts to come in and treat our residents because they were the experts. As they progressed and stacked up days, as we say in recovery, they became the experts and then could pass on the gift to the new guy.
The stewards oversee the progress of the newer residents and report to the other board members. They are in charge of enforcing the Grace House's strict code of conduct.
If you don't follow the rules, out the door.
Another thing that we learned in the early days is that we needed to have boundaries in place. This could not be a free-for-all. These guys were homeless for reasons related to addiction, which had made their lives wildly unboundaried. They didn't have any rules in place. Even if they wanted to keep rules and discipline in their life in active addiction, they couldn't do it. So what they needed from us was structure, boundaries, rules, schedule. Everybody has to participate in doing chores around the house. Everybody has to participate in making sure your brother, your fellow resident, was doing their chores and making it to meetings and this sort of thing. So very communal.
If I'm going to tell somebody about the Grace House, it's total transformation of men from what they're used to. Okay? They change their demeanor. They change how they walk around. They change how they throw their shoulders back. They hold their head up. They get their driver's license back. They get their kids back. Not all the time do they get their wives back, but they become good people.
You go in there with nothing. It's more or less a homeless shelter, but you go in there with nothing, and they teach you how to live. They teach you how to be a member of society again. I went to a rehab, one of the most expensive rehabs in the country, and it didn't really work for me. The Grace House is a tough, no nonsense. I guess you want to call it a treatment. A tough treatment, but it gets results.
It's a humbling experience for somebody to move into a homeless shelter, and we think it's good for them.
I used to be so embarrassed by the sign out there because it said homeless shelter. And why it embarrassed me, I don't know, because I had no problem hanging out in the basement of trap houses, shooting dope. That didn't embarrass me at all. But, you know, when I came to the Grace House, the homeless sign embarrassed me for some reason. And eventually, I opened myself and realized, you know what? I got myself here. This place is here to get me better. It's a blessing.
You know, it's not the easiest thing to do is not to live with 14 guys or 12 guys with all different personalities, but it really made an effect on me and really made me, you know, understand that there are still loving people and caring people in the world that are willing to give you a second chance at life.
I went to jail and I lost everything. Before jail, I had nothing. When I got out, there was no way that I would have been able to get help if it wasn't for the Grace House, because of what it is. And I wouldn't have been able to get help. I couldn't afford $1,800 10-week program or anything like that. But this program, I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing what it does, and it doesn't ask a lot of us. It just asks that we become better men.
I've been sober now for over a year, and I'm starting to get, you know, I got my kids, I got my job back where I live in Key West, and I couldn't be happier with the results I got from the Grace House.
Probably everybody knows the parable of the Good Samaritan. There's this guy who's in a ditch. He's hurt. He's been beaten up. He may well have easily, it's not a stretch to think he could have been an addict. And, you know, person after person walked by him. And that person after person who walked by him is me. Is any of us kind of almost sort of innocently walking past him because we don't know what to do. We don't feel like we're equipped to help him. But then one day we get tired of walking past him, right? We get down in the ditch with him. That's the parable of the Grace House. We walked past our neighbors who were homeless and addicted and getting arrested, and almost innocently, because we didn't realize we had the gifts right there in our own bodies and in our community to help them. But one day, for whatever reason, I mean, God's grace, right? It's a miracle. We stopped, walked right up to him and said, you know what? I'm not going to walk past you anymore. I don't know what the answer is exactly, but let's learn together. And then he sleeps in a lawnmower shed that night, you know? I never would have dreamed that we would put a guy up in a lawnmower shed and it would lead to, you know, more than a decade later, over 2,000 people housed and helped through a ministry called the Grace House.
I've got a 6-month-old baby right now. If it wasn't for this program, it wasn't me continuously doing what I'm doing, I wouldn't have this child in my life. And when this child grows up, this child will never see me drink or use drugs, which is the first child I've ever had that ever did that. Sorry.
For rural communities with limited treatment options, the Grace House model may offer a solution to our state's worsening rates of substance use disorder. For more information about how to launch a similar program, please visit tnopioid.utk.edu and smart.tennessee.edu. Thank you.